Podcast. I am Annette Klosowski. I am a founding partner of Future Point of View, and I am here with Dan Shewart. And Dan is a veteran in the technology space, and he is the practice lead of our integrated strategy and advisory. So we are in good hands to be guided by Dan.
I like veteran better than old.
Yes, see, wasn't that good? That was really good. That's good.
Made me feel better.
And it's like, it's better than saying you've been around the block a few times. Yeah. You know a lot of things because you've been around the block a few times.
So you just look worn out.
That's right. That's about how it goes. So, and this is my first HighBeam podcast. So
welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, this would be great. Today's topic, which I am partial to, because we are going to be talking about AI, but we're also going to move into the digital well-being side of it.
Which is your space.
Yes, it is. So I'm very excited about that. Much needed. So let's kind of start just talking a little bit about the AI tools and also just those open source fears that people have.
And I know we're talking about AI again. AI, what's up with that?
Well, but think about, what we are seeing at Future Point of View, that is the hot thing.
That's all anyone wants to talk about, and for good reason. And so, part of today, we're thinking that because of all the hype and negative hype about AI, it might be good to talk about the fears and all that around there. And so many tools are coming out now that people can use, and companies are using open source tools to make their version of whatever AI chatbot or whatever AI feature they want to build, which has people see in the news, a lot of people worried about that. The government's worried now that there's really little to no control over what kind of AI tools they are building. And AI can get out of control. A lot of times you don't know what AI will produce out of we talked about the large language models, the source where it uses all that. They don't have control over what that produces all the time. So there's fear of, okay, is it biased? What are these companies producing if there are no guardrails around it? Which are putting the people in the know fearful of it, but then there's been a lot of discussion around it, so everyone's getting fearful about, okay, what's happening? What's the next thing that's going to be built that's going to be worrisome or destructive, to someone's way of life? And so it's just creating, more and more anxiety as people go along.
Yeah. Well, and we have a lot of leaders and C-suite executives that listen to this podcast. And I think it's important because you're making decisions as well for companies. And I think it's important that you understand at the top and all the way down. Like you really have to have a good understanding. So talk about kind of the next wave of scammers that you see coming with the AI. We've already read about, several of them in the news, but talk a little bit about that next wave.
Yeah, so the latest fear, I guess, coming up has been scammers, but really just security issues around AI. So scammers that are building these bots or tools where you think you're interacting with the website or you're interacting with a live human being, and it is, while you're interacting with it, gathering more information about you than you realize, being able to maybe get into assets on your device and figure out things, and that would prompt it to ask other questions. So it's gathering information so it can talk to you, converse with you, and try to gather more from you without you really being aware. You're being manipulated. But now instead of manipulated by a human being, you're being manipulated by an AI that has 10 times the amount of information on you than an individual would. So that's scary, about what an AI engine could find out about you just in conversation.
Yeah, and I know one thing that you have in your practice is a generative AI usage policy. So I think that's also really important for organizations to have a usage policy because it addresses things so that they don't, when you have your employees out, you don't then have some kind of a security issue or breach with your company.
Yeah, and putting the company at risk because, your employees are using generative AI tools or building now with their tools available, they can build their own AI tool to gather data and make decisions. So what are the controls or that? What's happening? Is it biased information? Is your HR department developing these things that could be used in the interview process that are biased and could get a firm into, an organization into legal trouble? So there are a lot of moving parts to this, things you have to be aware of, because before is, when there's a set amount of tools developed by companies like Google and Microsoft, they're used to building these guidelines and these controls around that. But now you have smaller companies doing this, and then you have employees bring these tools in and building their own things with it. Little control on both sides of it, which there are things in there I guarantee you will put the company at risk over the long term.
Yeah, I saw a really cool, and we'll put this in the podcast notes. I know you have a list of really cool AI tools, right, for people, because we're all learning, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's warp speed.
I saw three new ones yesterday that I had never heard of before.
I saw one on social media that was really cool, and it just said, you give them the links to your website, any sales materials, and you tell them to build a social media campaign and the assets, and then what you're trying to do in your funnel. So if you're trying to get more business in this arena for this product, and then it would build the messaging and the campaigns that you'd put out, and they're ready to go.
That's
like incredible. It would be ready to go in social media. So the answer is not let's not use AI. It's you need to figure out how to use it safely. Because effective that's kind of going on. I mean, it's going to be effective. You just have to take the risk and security.
There's another fear right there, right? People, that's replacing a job.
Yeah, I hear that a lot about, well, what are we going to have? Just companies that don't have any employees because they're all run by AI. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think people are too worried about AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is a conscious AI entity. And so everyone thinks of, Terminator and taking over the world. And there's a lot of the hype you read about, but that's really not the concerns right now anyway. I think the concerns are with what I do for a living, how is that going to be impacted with AI? And will that, those tasks or my job as a whole be replaced by artificial intelligence? And that you gave a great example. I think marketing, digital marketing is a big risk right now. If I was in that field, I'd be really thinking about, my career path and how that's going to be impacted with AI because there is so much out there now. I saw one the other day was, it's like, why are you building PowerPoints? There's a tool out there now. You just give your 10, 20, 30 points and kind of what the context is, and it builds a full out slides with all the graphics built into it and the transitions, animations. It just generates it for you.
The thing that I get stumped on is, why wouldn't you want an AI to do those tasks and then have the person giving the presentation really focused on who's in the room, how do I connect, or could I be developing more resources or contacts? Like, I think people will just navigate to a different area where we a lot of times don't have time to focus, but that's where, the relationships and the personal connections is where the magic is. The rest are tools around us. So, but I think it's a fear.
That's your background. But I agree with that. I think with AI, if you let it happen to you, you can be at risk. If you get ahead of the curve and you own it, and like you said, you use the tools and then you go beyond, right, your normal day-to-day whatever you do, and use that time more to build relationships or whatever it is in your role, but own those tools, own it, be the person that knows all about it, and then use them to advance your behavior, how you act in your job, take that to the next level.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, when we used to ask people if they had Microsoft Office suite experience, and now you don't even ask that because it's assumed. At some point, we're going to start asking what AIs do you use in order to, whatever your expertise is in. And then at some point, it's going to be assumed that you know how to use a bunch of AIs. Yeah. So, but let's talk about back to the fear, the security around the personal side of it. So what would you say to people that, because there are a lot of people very fearful about it personally.
Yeah. And I think the personal part of it is, there's not a lot of control you can do right now. I think it's more of just fear of what could happen. Could an AI get into my bank account? Could I be fooled by AI? Right? But again, I think it comes back to just being aware of these tools and how they operate. So if you're not getting into some of these generative AI tools and learning how they work and looking at the AI tools that are available in your personal life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Yeah.
use tools to, check your finances, are those tools AI enabled? So do you go online into your financial institution, and do they have a tool that will assess your current financial status and give you recommendations? Is that a reliable company?
Mm-hmm.
What are their policies on those tools? Do they have any? And if they don't, I'd really be questioning that. Because if they don't have currently built into their use policies how they're using AI and how they're using that information that AI collects, I'd be concerned. So these are the ways you can start investigating. I'm not sure there are a lot of walls you can put up right now. There will be, but I think really just understanding the impact and how it's impacting your day-to-day life and the tools you use, I think it's really important to take a look at that.
And we're already experiencing it. So I know a lot of people where, like you and I are having this conversation, and later on our phones, we're going to probably be pushed ads on AI, right? I mean, we already have that happening to us. If you order on Amazon and it starts learning your preferences or even brands you go to, and there's something that's really efficient about that. And then again, I think there is a security side where that's opened, and I don't think the answer is going to be we just all lock down and nobody's going to.
You won't be able to.
Yeah. And you're going to, again, why would you not want the efficiencies if you can safeguard against that?
Yeah, and I guess the big thing for me is just, understand it, own it. Don't be afraid of it. Just learn about it as much as you can. But not just at work, but in your personal life as well. And so I think that, you're the wellness person. I think that helps reduce your anxiety about it, right?
Yeah, and I think you channel, in areas, bite sizes. What's going to give you the most effective, outcome right now, and maybe you just focus on that.
Yeah, that one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so let's talk about coping. So people are inundated with information you can find on AI. They're starting to learn. They're having fears come up. I mean, how do you kind of cope with the learning curve, which is steep, and then just the fear, and this is wouldn't you call this bleeding edge?
Yeah.
I mean, this technology is really out in front before a lot of safeguards have been there. It'll catch up. But talk about what you would suggest people just around the coping around it.
Yeah, I think coping with the change, right? The change is happening so quickly. We have what we call rivers of information. That's a big thing at FPOV. And that is to identify sources of information that you're fed throughout the day. And I think one thing that I would do is just start to read some articles, if you haven't been, on AI, from some sources that are reliable, like MIT has a really good one.
Yeah.
And we have a list too.
We do.
They can look at. And really it's just start, and not to read about it so you get freaked out about it, because if you just go to general social media, you can be, but really have a more focused effort, like you talked about, on what you're reading about AI. And just so you're familiar with it, and as it advances so quickly, you're at least more aware of it. And to me, for me personally, that's always been a good coping mechanism. Just to keep abreast of the situation, but to make sure I'm not getting off on, some fringe element that is just their only purpose is to instill fear.
Yeah. And a lot of the tools are free. So I'm a believer in getting your own hands on it. So once you go to Chat GPT with your own hands and you're putting in a prompt and you see what it can spit out, I think that's where you start connecting with the value, and then that opens up a little bit. But a lot of these are free. You don't have to, have a license or an annual monthly membership. It's like you can just go out and look at those. Yeah. So,
in fact, I think ChatGPT is a good example, because of whatever field you're in, type in something you already know about and see how ChatGPT responds to that. Something with a little detail. Right, so if you're in finance, something about finance, put that in ChatGPT, and you'll begin to see where it sits as far as its knowledge compared to your knowledge. If you're a subject matter expert, because I've seen with a lot of the more technical things I've asked about that I already know, I notice that ChatGPT, they're pretty good. Sometimes they're at a college level, maybe a master's. I have to add my own experience and knowledge that I've gained over the years to that. So it's been really interesting, and I kind of see the limitations of ChatGPT. So it becomes more of a known.
Yeah.
And you can do that with if you're a graphic artist, go into some of the generative, graphic tools and generate some graphics that you would normally generate by hand and see what the differences are.
Yeah.
How good is it? What would you do better? What would you do different? You go, oh, okay, I kind of see where this fits as a tool versus a threat.
Yeah. And there's new careers opening up in this field too. So there's that avenue.
Prompts.
Yes,
right?
prompt engineer.
It's no longer low code, it's prompts. How good are your prompts? So if you're listening right now and you don't know prompts, that is one area where you can investigate and find out what a prompt is and what we mean when we say that, why that's important to understand that.
Just think Google search and what you put in the Google search, how you ask for things. Well, if you're listening and you would like more information, maybe you're running a company and you don't know where to start, Dan is great. So he's got a practice. You can reach him. You can go to Future Point of View's website, fpov.com, connect with Dan, and he can help you. And like I said, we have a lot of great resources. Just get the creative thinking going and help companies.
Well, thanks, Annette. That's fun. I enjoyed that.
All right. I enjoyed it too.
All right.
Until next time.
Yes, I love that. Until next time.
Your host. I'm an executive coach, a speaker, a peer advisory board leader, and today I am joined in this new year by my co-host Addison Price. All things demand generation and branding. It's like
that
we need a tagline.
So what I do. Yeah, that's my superpower.
See, and I know the title. I got it. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, we've been practicing. And you finally nailed it. That's perfect. Yeah, I'm excited for the New Year podcast.
I know. We've got a great series of podcasts that we're bringing to you. Some good, fresh energy, amazing people doing big things in the world. I love people that don't play small. And speaking of somebody who doesn't play small, we have Victoria Woods on the show today. So what you're going to learn is we could probably have 6 podcasts with her. So
absolutely,
what we really wanted is just to share somebody that comes from humble beginnings, that probably could have had a path that, didn't end where it did. And so she shares a lot of stories and opportunities and just about how she even started her, very successful financial advising business. So she is the chief investment advisor and founder of Chapelwood Financial Services. She's an advisor to affluent clients, been doing that over 30 years. She's a very recognized leader in the investment advisory industry. I do not have time to list all the awards and recognitions, but she's been featured in Newsweek magazine for the Financial Planning Guide. She has authored books. It's all about the money, honey. She's appeared on the Today Show with Meredith Vieira. She's been on Success Today with Bachelor Bob, Fox News, Fox Business, CBS, NBC. I mean, you name it. She's been on the TV show. She hosts a weekly radio show. It's all about the money, honey, on iHeartMedia. She gives back in big ways. She's on boards for Asset Mark Wealth Management, Enterprising Women magazine. She was appointed by the governor of the state of Oklahoma to the Oklahoma State Commission on the Status of Women. She was just recognized as one of the 55 most inspiring Oklahomans. I mean, it goes on and on.
If just her intro isn't inspiring enough, I don't know what else will be. Yeah.
I know. She started some great groups. So after the interview in the podcast notes, we will really have all the ways you can connect with Victoria. So radio show, her books. She has a Aspiring Millionaires Club. You can join. She's, like I said, does not have a lack of energy, and she doesn't have a lack for ideas. So I actually just ran into her at the gym not too long ago, and so I'm like, yeah, I see you everywhere. So I'm really pleased to have Victoria. All right, well, welcome, Victoria. It is so good to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoy doing podcasts so much, and especially women that I admire so much as you, Annette.
Oh, well, thank you. In your introduction, there was no way to possibly list all of your accolades, your awards, everything, where you've been recognized. But I do want to say congratulations. You were just recognized as one of 55 inspiring Oklahomas, which most definitely deserves. So that's like probably hot off the press for you.
Yeah, that was, and it's pretty impressive that, to me, the company I'm keeping, when you look at, there's General Aragon and Lou Kerr and JC, I mean, just look at the list of people. So I was truly very honored to actually be recognized in that group, and then to know that we were going to be exhibited during this legislative session at the Capitol, the Rotunda. So that reception was pretty special as well. So thank you.
Wow. You do big things, like there's nothing that you do that's small. You do not play small. So you play big, which I love, but you also give big. So all the recognition and things that you've been bestowed upon you are so well deserved. So, and I'm excited because I get to call you a friend, and I get to have you and kind of share a little bit about your story. So I want to jump in. I really kind of help us. Just how did Victoria get started? Like, kind of walk us early on, and then I do want to talk about how you got into the financial advisor business and what made you take that leap. But kind of where were you when you were young Victoria, and how did you kind of start your path?
Well, I'm old, so we've got to go way back. It's going to be a long podcast, Annette.
Hey, we've got unlimited storage. We're good.
Well, I appreciate you asking that, because usually we just jump right in from the finance. But when I was reading some of your emails and thinking about, what you wanted to talk about as far as leadership, and it really goes back to meeting a woman when I was 13 years old, and she was on stage at my junior high. And, that's an awkward time. Girls, 13, 14, I mean, it's an unusual time for us. I have to admit it was. I mean, I ran away from home. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. So it's a challenging time for us. But this woman came to our school and was talking about this program. It was really motivational. And I just watched her just strut across this whole stage. She didn't just come up and stand and talk. I mean, she kind of strutted back and forth. And I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was mesmerized by this woman. And she was asking for young women to come and participate in what was called a Wendy Ward Paysetter program. And that was years ago when Montgomery Ward had an advisory board team, and we did fashion shows. And so, I mean, I was all in, because I had come from such humble beginnings. And that's a nice way of saying we were very poor, just saying. So, we didn't have lunch money. I don't even know if you know my backstory really in that.
I don't, yeah.
7 of us living in this matchbox house. And then there was 9 of us on the weekends with my stepfather's other 2 children. So, we didn't have lunch money. I found a way to, when I was 11 and 12 years old, we moved in when I was on my 12th birthday. And there was a fence in the backyard with an apartment complex. So, of course, all of us, brothers and sisters, we get tired of playing with each other. We go to the apartment complex and we play kickball. And, we just have a great time. But all of these kids needed supervising. And I realized that I could start a little side hustle is what we call it today. Back then we just said, I'm your babysitter. And I started babysitting one child after another. And I realized, well, why don't I just group them all together? I don't have to pick and choose. I can just tell all these moms, I'll do them all together. At 12 years old, Annette, I was babysitting 6 kids at a time, from infants to about 11 or 12 years old. But as my mom would say, I was always kind of bossy. So she said I came out of the womb bossy. And she called me about 3 years ago and was telling me she's laughing, reading my baby books. And she said she just laughed, because my mom doesn't call me. It's like, my job to call mom. That's our rule in our world. So when she calls, you think, oh my gosh, what's happened? But she's laughing, and I'm like, what is so funny? And she said, I have written baby books, and all this, you got the 1 year, here's a clip of her little hair. She's bossy. Your baby book says, yes, she got a tooth, she started walking, whatever, and she's bossy. in year 3, she says, and she's still bossy. But in some of my first recollections was I was always the runt. So I'm pretty little, 5 foot, but all of my cousins, I always organized the games. And everybody was going to play. It's like, nope, this is what we're doing. Here we're going. You're going to do this. You're on so-and-so's team. And everybody just followed my lead. So, and you don't think about those things when you're young. But as I got older and people start asking me, then I look back and I go, well, my mama said I was always bossy. I came out bossy. Why not be a boss? But
well, I love that I love that you were at a young age, there was an opportunity to join something and you took that step, because I think there's a lot of people not so young that get opportunities, and if it's fear